You are now listening to Accidentally Slept with Ruthless Billionaire, a full billionaire romance audiobook. Synopsis. Ava Sinclair never meant to wake up in Damien Lancaster's bed. One wrong hotel room, a few too many drinks, and suddenly, she's tangled with New York's most feared billionaire, a man known for breaking those who cross him. Damien is ruthless, calculating, and utterly untouchable. The last thing he needs is a scandal threatening his empire. When a public misunderstanding forces him to claim Ava as his fiancée, she's thrown into a world of wealth, deception, and dangerous secrets. At first, it's just a deal, a contract to protect both their reputations. But when Ava discovers she's carrying Damien's child, everything changes. And the most shocking part, Damien already knew. As whispers of betrayal swirl and powerful enemies close in, Ava realizes that being tied to Damien Lancaster isn't just dangerous, it might be deadly. Someone wants her gone, and the only person who can save her is the man she should never have trusted. But Damien doesn't just protect what's his. He owns it. And now Ava belongs to him. Love, lies, and a dangerous game of power. Will Ava survive the ruthless billionaire's world, or will she become just another pawn in his empire? Chapter 1. Ava Sinclair's head throbbed as the sunlight filtered through the towering floor-to-ceiling windows, its golden glow casting long streaks across silk sheets that weren't hers. A warm weight pressed against her waist, a firm, possessive grip that sent a shiver down her spine, except this wasn't comforting. It was wrong. Her eyes snapped open, and her breath hitched in her throat. The first thing she saw was him. Damien Lancaster, New York's most feared billionaire. Ruthless, calculating, a man with power at his fingertips and ice in his veins. And he was in bed with her. Panic surged through Ava as she yanked herself free from the heavy arm draped around her waist. Her heartbeat hammering against her ribs like a war drum. Her mind raced, scrambling for answers, for logic, but none of it made sense. She wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be in the penthouse suite of one of the most powerful men in the world. The last thing she remembered was few drinks, the hotel bar. Mistake. Her hands trembled as she clutched the sheets to her bare chest, scanning the opulent room. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne and whiskey, a dangerous combination that clung to her skin. Her stomach twisted into knots. What have I done? She moved too quickly, and the bed creaked, her sudden motion disturbing the sleeping beast beside her. A low, guttural sound rumbled from his throat, a sound that sent shockwaves through her body. Then, as if sensing the disruption, Damien Lancaster stirred. Ava barely had time to react before cold, steel-gray eyes snapped open, locking onto hers like a predator catching its prey. A moment of tense, suffocating silence stretched between them. Then his gaze flickered, down to the sheets she clutched, to the exposed skin of her bare shoulder, and finally back to her face. His expression hardened. "What the hell are you doing here?" Damien's voice was a deep, dangerous growl, one that sent icy dread down Ava's spine. Her throat went dry. I don't know," she stammered, panic lacing her voice. "I don't remember." She didn't get to finish, because Damien Lancaster was already sitting up, his towering frame now fully awake, fully aware, and fully furious. His shirtless form was all sharp angles and brutal perfection, muscles carved from stone, the kind of body that exuded dominance and power. But it wasn't his physique that made her breath catch. It was the way he looked at her, cold, suspicious, as if she was the enemy. "You don't remember." His voice was dangerously soft, laced with something far more menacing than his earlier rage. Ava's lips parted, desperate to explain, to plead her case, but he was already moving, ripping the sheets off himself, standing to his full, imposing height. The power in his presence was suffocating. "You expect me to believe that?" he asked, taking a slow, calculated step toward her. Ava's pulse skyrocketed. She felt cornered, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. I wasn't supposed to be here," she insisted, clutching the sheets tighter, as if they could shield her from his terrifying intensity. "There must have been a mistake." I was at the bar, I had a drink, and I don't know how I got here. Damien's jaw clenched, his sharp features darkening with something dangerous. A mistake, he echoed, his voice a lethal whisper. Let me guess. You just accidentally ended up in my bed? Ava flinched. No, she gasped, horrified that he'd even think that. I must have walked into the wrong room or... Damien's chuckle was cold. A humorless, razor-sharp sound that sent chills through her. How convenient, he murmured, his eyes unreadable. Ava's stomach dropped. God. He thought she'd done this on purpose. She swallowed hard, panic gripping her chest like a vice. I would never. Save it. Damien cut her off, his tone like ice. I've seen women play this game before. You think you're smart, don't you? A little innocent act, some convenient memory loss, and suddenly you're the victim. Ava's breath hitched. He didn't believe her. Fury and humiliation crashed over her like a tidal wave. How dare he assume she was like that? She wasn't some scheming socialite trying to trap a billionaire in a scandal. She was Ava Sinclair, a struggling fashion designer barely making ends meet, someone who worked herself to the bone to survive. And now, thanks to some cruel twist of fate, she was standing half-naked in Damien Lancaster's bed, accused of something she hadn't even done. Her fingers dug into the sheets, her shock turning into anger. I don't need anything from you, she spat, her voice trembling. Not your money. Not your attention. And definitely not this. Damien's gaze flickered, just for a second, as if weighing the truth in her words. But then, just as quickly, the wall was back up. His expression blank, unreadable. You expect me to believe that, he said coldly. Ava clenched her jaw. I don't care what you believe, she snapped. I just want to get out of here. Without another word, she ripped the sheets off, grabbing whatever clothing she could find. Her dress was a crumpled mess on the floor, and she snatched it up, her hands shaking as she forced herself to move to run. Damien didn't stop her. He just stood there, watching with that cold, calculating stare, as if he were studying her, waiting for her next move. Ava's fingers fumbled with the doorknob, but before she could twist it open, Damien spoke again. I don't like games, Ava, he murmured, his voice quieter this time, but somehow even more menacing. She froze. Name. She never told him her name. Slowly she turned back, her heart racing. Damien leaned against the bedpost, arms crossed, watching her with a dark amusement. That's right, he said. I know exactly who you are. Ava's breath caught in her throat. What? She whispered. His smirk was deadly. You think you just ended up in my bed by accident? Damien's voice was a silken threat. Then tell me, why did you check into my hotel under a fake name? Ava's entire world tilted. What the hell was he talking about? Fake name. Hotel records. None of this made sense. Her head spun, panic creeping into every inch of her body. Damien, she breathed, shaking her head. I didn't. But he was already stepping closer, closing the distance between them. His fingers brushed her jaw, tilting her chin just enough to make her look into his eyes. Steel gray, cold and knowing. Careful, Ava, he murmured. You might not like what you find out. Ava's pulse thundered. And in that moment she knew. This wasn't just a mistake. This was the beginning of something dangerous. And she might not survive it. Chapter 2. Ava Sinclair never thought one night, one mistake, would shatter her entire world. But as she stared at the screen of her phone, heart pounding, breath lodged somewhere in her throat, she realized just how wrong she'd been. 'Cause there it was, plastered across every gossip site, every social media platform, and every entertainment channel. Photos of her leaving Damien Lancaster's penthouse. The images were unforgiving, blurry yet undeniable. Her face was visible, her expression tired and anxious as she hurried out of the luxury building. Her hair still messy, her clothes wrinkled. It didn't take much for the internet to fill in the blanks. Ava Sinclair, the billionaire's one-night stand. Who is this mystery woman Damien Lancaster spent the night with? Gold digger or future Mrs. Lancaster? The fashion designer caught in a scandal. Ava's stomach twisted as she scrolled through the comments, a sea of brutal judgment and speculation. Typical. Another nobody trying to trap a billionaire. Look at her, she's so desperate for attention. She planned this. I bet she accidentally ended up in his bed on purpose. She's not even that pretty. Damien could do way better. Ava's fingers trembled as she locked her phone, shoving it away as if that could erase what had already been done. How did this happen? The memories of the morning after came crashing back. Damien's cold, accusing eyes. The way he'd dismissed her like she was nothing more than a woman playing games. But she hadn't played any games. And now, thanks to a few strategically taken photos, the entire world thought she was some pathetic gold digger, some scheming social climber who had set her sights on one of the most powerful men in New York. Ava inhaled sharply, forcing herself to push the panic aside. Focus. You have work to do. Tonight was supposed to be her night. The exclusive charity fashion gala, an event attended by the elite, by the people who could make or break a designer's career. It was the first time Ava's brand had been given a chance to shine. Her designs would be showcased, worn by models who would walk in front of New York's most powerful investors, celebrities, and industry moguls. It was supposed to be a dream come true. But now she'd be walking into a room full of people who had already read the headlines. People who would whisper behind her back, judge her, humiliate her. For a brief moment she considered not going. But then she saw her mother's face in her mind, the way she used to encourage Ava when she felt like giving up, the way she always said, "You weren't born to be small, Ava. Show them who you are." So, with shaking hands, Ava put on her best dress, her best armor, and walked straight into the Lion's Den. The charity fashion gala. The moment Ava stepped into the grand ballroom, she felt it. The stares, the hushed whispers, the smirks of women who lived for gossip, and the judgmental glares of men who had already decided she wasn't worthy of being in the same room as them. She ignored it. She walked with her head held high, her confidence a fragile shield against the storm raging around her. She had worked too hard to let some scandal ruin her. Her designs were already being displayed on the runway. Stunning gowns that flowed like liquid silver, pieces that had taken her years to perfect. And then, it happened. The moment the first model stepped onto the runway, the whispers turned into gasps. Because the dress she was wearing, Ava's design, her masterpiece, had been slashed. The fabric, once smooth and elegant, was torn, ruined. A deliberate act of sabotage. The model faltered, panic flashing across her face as she tried to walk with dignity, but the damage had already been done. Laughter rippled through the audience. A woman nearby whispered loud enough for Ava to hear, "Guess sleeping with a billionaire doesn't give you talent." A humiliated heat crawled up Ava's neck, but she refused to let them see her break. Then another model stepped out, another ruined dress. And another. And another. One by one, her entire collection was destroyed in front of the most powerful people in fashion. Her career, the one she had fought so hard to build, was crumbling right before her eyes. And then, voice. Commanding. Dangerous. That's enough. The entire room froze. Because standing at the entrance, in a perfectly tailored black suit, was Damien Lancaster. The moment his name was whispered across the room, the energy shifted. People moved aside, clearing a path for the man who owned New York. Ava's heart stopped as he walked toward her. His presence suffocating, overwhelming, impossible to ignore. Then, just as she opened her mouth to ask what the hell he was doing here, Damien did the unthinkable. He reached for her hand, in front of everyone, and pulled her against him. Then, with that same ruthless smirk that sent entire boardrooms into silence, he turned to face the press and said, "Since the world is so interested in Ava, let's make things clear." Was a moment of dead silence. She's not some woman I spent the night with. Another pause. She's my fiancé. The room exploded. Ava's breath caught in her throat. Fiancé. Her entire body locked up as reporters scrambled to take pictures, as gasps filled the air, as the whispers turned into a full-blown media frenzy. Damien's grip on her waist was unshakable, unyielding, unrelenting, and as he leaned in, his lips just inches from her ear, he whispered only for her to hear, "Play along, Ava, or you won't survive this." And just like that, her entire life changed. Chapter 3. The second the words left Damien's mouth, Ava felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. Fiancé. The word hung in the air, thick and inescapable, as the ballroom erupted into chaos. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks, voices clashed in a frenzy of gasps and exclamations, and all around her people turned, staring, speculating, judging. Ava's entire body went rigid. Damien's grip on her waist tightened like a vice, as if daring her to fight back. "Smile," he murmured, his voice a sharp blade against her ear. "Or they'll eat you alive." Ava's stomach churned. The heat of his body pressed against her side, an unshakable force, a cage she had just walked into without realizing. Her pulse hammered, her breath came too fast, but years of surviving in the fashion industry had taught her one thing: never show weakness. So she forced a smile. A brittle, shaky, and completely unnatural smile, but a smile nonetheless. "Miss Sinclair, how long have you and Mr. Lancaster been engaged? Why was your relationship kept a secret until now? Are the wedding plans already in motion? Was this why you spent the night at his penthouse?" Ava barely heard the questions over the roaring in her ears. She wanted to scream, to yank herself free, to tell the entire world that Damien was lying. But she knew exactly what would happen if she did. The internet had already branded her a gold digger. If she denied this now, the narrative would only shift into something even worse. Poor girl, thinking she could trap a billionaire. Look at her getting rejected in public. He probably slept with her once and threw her away. She could already see the headlines, hear the whispers, feel the suffocating weight of humiliation crushing down on her. So she said nothing. Damien, however, wasn't finished yet. He gave the press one of his signature smirks, the kind that made CEOs sweat and socialites swoon, before pulling Ava even closer. "We'll be making an official announcement soon," he said smoothly, like this was all part of some grand plan. "For now, I'd appreciate it if you respect my fiancé's privacy." And just like that, he was leading her away. Ava felt herself being guided through the crowd, her mind a whirling mess of confusion, anger, and absolute fury. This was insane. Damien Lancaster, New York's coldest, most ruthless billionaire, had just publicly claimed her as his fiancée, and she had no idea why. But the second they were alone, she would find out. And she was going to kill him. The confrontation. The second the ballroom doors slammed shut behind them, Ava ripped herself away from Damien's grip and whirled to face him. "What the hell was that?" she hissed, her voice shaking with rage. Damien barely blinked. "Lower your voice." "Screw you," she snapped. "You just told the entire world that we're engaged. Are you out of your mind?" His expression remained cold, unreadable, but there was a dangerous glint in his eyes. "I just saved your life." Ava let out a bitter laugh. "Oh really? Because from where I'm standing, you just ruined it." "Did I?" Damien took a calculated step forward, and Ava instinctively moved back, her body colliding against the wall. He loomed over her, every inch of him power, control, and absolute danger. "Think, Ava," he murmured, his voice silk and steel. "What would have happened if I hadn't stepped in tonight?" Ava opened her mouth, but no words came out. 'Cause she knew. She knew exactly what would have happened. Her ruined collection would have been mocked and ridiculed. The scandal would have escalated. Her career would have gone up in flames. But now, instead of being seen as a gold digger, she was seen as Damien Lancaster's fiancée. Which meant she wasn't just some woman he slept with. She was someone important. Someone untouchable. Ava's jaw clenched. "You manipulated that entire situation." Damien's lips curved into the faintest smirk. "You're welcome." She wanted to hit him, Instead, she took a deep breath and forced herself to focus. "Fine," she said, her voice icy. "You did your part. Now tell the press you were lying." Damien tilted his head. "No." Ava's blood ran cold. "What?" "No," he shrugged, as if it was the simplest thing in the world. "I have no intention of taking it back." Ava stared at him, stunned, horrified, and furious all at once. Are you actually insane?" Damien ignored her outburst. "I have a proposal for you." She crossed her arms, glaring daggers at him. "Go to hell. Go along with this engagement," he continued smoothly. "And in return, I'll make sure your name and your brand survive this scandal." Ava's breath hitched. "Refuse," Damien went on, "and I'll watch you crash and burn." Her stomach twisted painfully. "You're blackmailing me," she whispered, realization sinking in like ice water in her veins. Damien's lips curled slightly. "I'm giving you a choice." Ava's hands clenched into fists. "Why? Why the hell are you doing this?" For the first time that night, something flickered across Damien's face. Something unreadable, something dark. "I have my reasons," he said finally. Ava didn't trust him. But she also knew that Damien Lancaster never did anything without a reason. Which meant that if he wanted this fake engagement to happen, there was something in it for him, something more than just saving her reputation. Something big. She sucked in a sharp breath. "How long?" Damien's smirk was pure sin. 6 months. Ava's heart skipped a beat. 6 months of pretending to be engaged to a man who terrified her. 6 months of being paraded around as Damien Lancaster's future wife. 6 months of standing beside the most powerful, most dangerous man in New York. Everything in her screamed to run. But the truth was, she had no choice. Because if she didn't take this deal, her career, her reputation, her entire life would be over. And so, with a deep breath, Ava looked Damien Lancaster right in the eyes and said, "Fine. You have a deal." And just like that, she sold her soul to the devil. Chapter 4. Ava had stepped into another universe. One of unimaginable wealth, power plays, and ruthless ambition. The world of Damien Lancaster. And it was nothing like she had expected. Crash course in power. The first morning in this new life, Ava woke up in a bedroom that wasn't hers. The sprawling penthouse suite, perched high above New York, had floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. The sheets beneath her were the softest silk, the air smelled of expensive cologne and power, and the realization hit her like a train. This is my life now. She wasn't really engaged to Damien Lancaster, but the world believed she was. And Damien was making damn sure that she played her part flawlessly. The first test, backstabbing socialites, started at breakfast. Ava sat at an elite cafe in Manhattan, dressed in a pristine designer dress Damien had picked out. Across from her sat Victoria Hartley and Celeste Dubois, two of the city's most powerful socialites, and Damien's business associates. Victoria's smile was as sharp as a knife. Her manicured fingers wrapped around a champagne flute. "So Ava," she purred, "tell us, how does it feel to be engaged to the most powerful man in New York?" Ava matched her smile, refusing to flinch under their scrutiny. "It's certainly a whirlwind," she said smoothly. Celeste tilted her head. "Oh, I'm sure. Damien isn't the type to settle down. He's had, 3 fiancés before." She laughed, sipping her mimosa. "But they all vanished before making it down the aisle." Ava's stomach twisted, but she didn't let it show. Instead, she leaned forward, meeting Celeste's gaze head-on. "Then I suppose that makes me the exception, doesn't it?" she said, voice laced with confidence she didn't feel. Celeste's smirk faltered just a little. "Point for me." But before Ava could bask in her tiny victory, Victoria leaned in, eyes glinting. "Sweetheart, we're just looking out for you," she said, voice dripping with fake concern. "This world. It's not for the weak." Ava's jaw clenched. They didn't see her as an equal. They saw her as an outsider. A temporary inconvenience. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. So Ava simply smiled and took a sip of her champagne. "I appreciate the warning," she murmured. "But I can handle myself." And from the way their expressions stiffened, they knew she meant it. A deal with the devil. Later that night, Damien took her to one of his business meetings. It was held in a private rooftop lounge, filled with the wealthiest men in the city, the kind who made decisions that shaped economies. Ava felt their eyes on her the moment she stepped inside, some with curiosity, some with amusement, and some with thinly veiled disdain. Damien, however, paid them no mind. Instead, he placed a possessive hand on her waist, guiding her through the crowd with a kind of effortless power that made people step aside without a word. "This is ridiculous," Ava muttered under her breath. "I don't belong here." "Yes, you do," Damien said smoothly. "And you're going to prove it." Before she could question him, he turned to one of the investors, a man named Walter Sinclair, a real estate mogul in his 60s. "Walter," Damien greeted. "I believe you know my fiancé." Ava froze. Walter's eyes narrowed slightly before recognition dawned. "Ah yes," he said slowly. "The designer." Ava knew that tone. The one that said, "You're not one of us." But she refused to be intimidated. So she straightened her shoulders and met Walter's gaze with cool confidence. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "And I heard you're opening a luxury hotel chain in Paris." Walter raised an eyebrow. "That's correct. Then you might be interested in my upcoming collection," she continued. "It's inspired by French architecture, specifically, designs that blend classic luxury with modern elegance. Perfect for a hotel seeking a timeless yet contemporary feel." Damien's gaze flickered to her, intrigued. Walter studied her for a long moment. Then he chuckled. "You're sharp," he admitted. "I'll have my people take a look at your designs." Ava exhaled discreetly. She had just held her own in a room full of business sharks. And when she glanced up at Damien, she swore she saw the faintest hint of admiration in his eyes. Cracks in the ice. The longer Ava spent in Damien's world, the more she realized something strange. Damien was never truly alone. He was always surrounded by power, by people, by control. And yet, there was a loneliness in him, a distance that never quite faded. One night, after another endless event, Ava found herself standing with him on his penthouse balcony, the city lights stretching out below. "You hate this, don't you?" she said quietly. Damien didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a slow sip of whiskey, his eyes fixed on the skyline. "Hate is a strong word." Ava tilted her head. "But not an inaccurate one." Finally, he looked at her. "This is the life I built." There was something almost bitter in his tone. Ava hesitated. "But is it the one you wanted?" For a moment, just a brief, fleeting moment, his mask cracked. And what she saw beneath it surprised her. Because for all his power, all his cold arrogance, Damien Lancaster looked like a man who had spent his whole life chasing something he could never quite catch. But before Ava could press further, his mask slammed back into place. And just like that, the moment was gone. Someone is watching. It started with a feeling, a prickling at the back of her neck, a sense that she was being watched. First she dismissed it. She was in the public eye now. Of course people were watching her. But then things started happening. A message slipped under her door, with nothing but the words, "Be careful who you trust." A shadowy figure outside the penthouse, gone before security could catch them. And then one night, her phone buzzed with a blocked number. Single text. "I know what you're hiding." Ava's blood ran cold. Because she wasn't hiding anything. But Damien was. And whatever it was, someone else knew. Chapter 5. Ava had never been one to feel weak. No matter what life threw at her, she always stood tall. But tonight everything changed. Public collapse. The evening was meticulously orchestrated. A high-profile business gala held at one of New York's most prestigious venues. Crystal chandeliers cast an ethereal glow over the ballroom, where the city's most powerful figures mingled over flutes of vintage champagne. Ava was there not as an outsider this time. Not as an underdog fighting for a seat at the table. She was there as Damien Lancaster's fiancée. Or at least that's what the world believed. Dressed in a stunning midnight blue gown, her hair styled in loose waves, she looked every bit the part of the billionaire's elegant partner. But something was wrong. The moment she stepped into the ballroom, a wave of nausea hit her. Her vision blurred, the scent of expensive perfume and aged whiskey turning her stomach. She tried to ignore it, tried to push through. Damien had told her this event was important. Ava had worked so hard to prove herself in his world. She wouldn't let a little discomfort ruin it. But then the room tilted. Ava barely had time to grip the edge of a marble table before everything went black. The diagnosis. Ava woke up to bright fluorescent lights. The beeping of medical monitors. The faint scent of sterile antiseptic. She was in a hospital. And Damien was there. Standing at the edge of the room, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Ava! His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. How do you feel? She pushed herself up, her head spinning. Like I got hit by a truck. Damien didn't laugh. Didn't smile. He just watched her. It was then that she noticed the doctor standing beside her bed, flipping through a clipboard. You're lucky you collapsed in a controlled environment, the doctor said. Stress, dehydration and fatigue. It all contributed. Ava nodded numbly. So I'm fine. The doctor hesitated. Damien's jaw tensed. Then the doctor said the words that changed everything. You're pregnant. Silence. Ava's heart stopped. She froze, staring at the doctor, her mind racing. Pregnant. Pregnant. With Damien's child. The room suddenly felt too small. Her fingers gripped the edge of the hospital blanket, her breath coming in short, uneven bursts. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. She started, her voice shaky. That's not possible. The doctor gave her a sympathetic smile. I assure you the test was conclusive. You're about 6 weeks along. 6 weeks. Ava's stomach dropped. She thought back. Back to the night it must have happened. The night when everything had spun out of control. The night she had fallen into Damien's bed. Should she tell him? The doctor excused himself, leaving her and Damien alone. Ava could feel his gaze burning into her, but she couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. She was pregnant, with his child, and she had no idea what to do. Her hands pressed against her stomach, as if doing so would somehow make it feel more real. Would Damien be furious? Would he think she trapped him? Would he tell her to get rid of it? Ava's throat tightened. She had spent so much time surviving in his world. But this was different. This wasn't just business or reputation or manipulation. This was life. And for the first time since stepping into Damien's world, she felt completely lost. The secret call. Ava needed time. Time to think. Time to figure out how to tell him. So when Damien left the hospital room to take a call, she didn't question it. She assumed it was about work. About the gala they had left behind. But then, she heard something that made her blood run cold. His voice, low and dangerous, from just outside the door. Yes, I know. I suspected it. Ava's heartbeat pounded in her ears. I don't care what she decides, Damien continued. His tone flat, emotionless. I'll handle it. Ava's chest constricted. He knew. He already knew. And instead of talking to her, instead of discussing it like adults, he had made a phone call. And from the cold detachment in his voice, it was clear he had already made up his mind. Ava felt something inside her snap. Fury and betrayal. When Damien walked back into the hospital room, he found Ava standing by the window, arms crossed, fire in her eyes. He stopped short. What's wrong? Ava let out a sharp, bitter laugh. Oh, I don't know, Damien. Maybe the fact that you knew about the pregnancy before I even had a chance to tell you. His expression didn't change. You heard. Yeah, she spat. I heard. Damien exhaled, rubbing a hand over his jaw. Ava, this isn't. Save it. Her voice was sharp as a blade. You already made your decision, right? You'll handle it. She glared at him. Tell me, Damien. Exactly how were you planning to handle it? Silence. A tense, charged silence. Then Damien spoke, his voice measured. I wasn't going to force you into anything. Ava's stomach twisted, because the fact that he even said those words meant that, at some point, he considered it. She took a shaky breath, trying to hold back the betrayal clawing at her chest. This isn't just a business deal, Damien, she whispered. This isn't about power or money or control. His jaw tightened. I know that. Do you? Her eyes flashed with hurt. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're trying to control this, just like everything else in your world. Damien's hands curled into fists at his sides. I need to protect you. Ava laughed harshly. Protect me. Or protect yourself. Another silence. A heavier one. One that spoke of things left unsaid. Ava shook her head, stepping past him. I need air. Damien grabbed her wrist. Ava! She yanked away. For the first time since meeting him, she wasn't afraid of Damien Lancaster. She was furious. And if he thought she was going to let him dictate her future, he was dead wrong. Chapter 6. Ava had always known Damien Lancaster was dangerous. But she had never imagined this. A shocking revelation. The night air was cold, a sharp contrast to the fire burning inside her. After storming out of the hospital, Ava found herself standing on the balcony of Damien's penthouse. Her arms wrapped around herself, trying to make sense of it all. The pregnancy, the betrayal, and now, this revelation hanging between them like a loaded gun. Damien stood a few feet away, his hands in his pockets, his usually impenetrable face shadowed with something she couldn't quite read. Regret, pain, fear. She wasn't sure. All she knew was that she needed answers. Say it again, she demanded, her voice shaking despite the steel she tried to inject into it. Damien's jaw clenched. My first fiancé, he said quietly, was murdered. The words cut through the air like a knife. Ava's breath caught, her stomach twisting. Murdered. Not an accident. Not a tragic illness. Murdered. The weight of it pressed down on her like 1,000 pounds of lead. But before she could process it, he said something even worse. And now, I think you're next. Ava's world spins. Ava felt like the ground beneath her had just vanished. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. She had stepped into Damien's world knowing it was cutthroat, ruthless, filled with betrayals and power plays. But this was something else entirely. Her pulse pounded in her ears. Who? She whispered. Who would want me dead? Damien ran a hand through his hair, his usual perfect control slipping. I don't know yet. His voice was low, lethal. But someone is watching you, following you, and they're waiting for the right moment to strike. Ava's hands curled into tight fists. She refused to let fear consume her. Why? She demanded. Why would someone want to hurt me? Damien hesitated. Then, finally, he spoke the words that changed everything. Because every woman I've ever loved has been in danger. The ghost of the past. Ava stared at him, her heart hammering. Every woman. That meant, it wasn't just his fiancée. She thought back to the way Damien had always been so guarded, so distant, so unwilling to open up. Now she understood why. Tell me everything, she said. Damien took a slow breath, his body tense, as if he were reliving a nightmare. Her name was Celeste. His voice was hoarse, like it physically hurt to say her name. She was my first real love. We were engaged. And then one night she was gone. Ava's breath hitched. Gone, she repeated. He nodded stiffly. Someone broke into our house. They left no fingerprints, no DNA, no evidence. But they took her. And 2 days later. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. They found her body in the Hudson River. Ava pressed a hand to her mouth, horrified. Damien Lancaster, the cold, calculating billionaire, looked haunted. as if the past was still gripping him with icy fingers, refusing to let go. I searched for answers, he continued. I hunted down every possible lead. But no one would talk. No one would help. And when I pushed too far, he paused. Ava's stomach twisted. What? Damien's gaze locked onto hers. They came after someone else. Ava's blood ran cold. Who? My mother. A deadly pattern. Damien turned away, gripping the railing of the balcony so hard that his knuckles turned white. I sent her away after that, he said. She's been living under a new identity ever since. It was the only way to keep her safe. Ava swallowed hard. Damien. His gray eyes darkened. I lost Celeste. I almost lost my mother. And now? His voice dropped to a near whisper. I will not lose you. Ava's heart clenched. This wasn't just about protecting her. This was about guilt, fear, trauma. He had been fighting this battle alone for years. And now she was caught in the middle of it. But why me? She asked. Why now? Damien exhaled, stepping closer. Because you're with me. His voice was raw, unguarded. And whoever did this, whoever has been watching, they see you as a threat. Or worse. Ava felt a shiver run down her spine. Or worse, she echoed. Damien's jaw tensed. They see you as a message. Ava's breath hitched. Someone wanted her dead. Not because of what she'd done, but because she had dared to love Damien Lancaster. Ava refuses to run. Ava's first instinct was fear. To run. To hide. To disappear just like Damien's mother had. But then she thought about the life growing inside her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her child. And suddenly, fear wasn't an option. She lifted her chin. I'm not running. Damien's eyes flashed. Ava. No. She cut him off. I refuse to let some faceless enemy control my life. If they want to come for me, let them. Damien cursed under his breath. Ava, you don't understand. This isn't just some corporate rival or business enemy. This is someone who kills. I know that, she said firmly. But Damien, if we run, we'll always be running. And I won't live like that. Damien stared at her. For a long moment he didn't speak. Then, finally, he sighed, running a hand down his face. You're impossible. Ava smirked, despite the heaviness of the moment. You love it. A muscle in his jaw ticked. That's what terrifies me. The fight begins. Ava knew this wasn't over. If anything, this was just the beginning. Somewhere out there in the shadows, someone was watching her, waiting. But she wouldn't back down. Because for the first time since stepping into Damien's world, she realized she wasn't just playing the game. She was ready to win it. Chapter 7. Ava had always known power came with enemies. But she never expected the enemy to be blood. A dangerous discovery. The dim glow of her laptop screen was the only light in the room. Ava sat cross-legged on the bed, her hands trembling as she scrolled through the information she had managed to dig up. Newspaper archives, business reports, family records. The deeper she went, the colder her blood ran. Everything pointed to one name. Elias Lancaster. Damien's stepbrother. The man who had been lurking in the shadows of the Lancaster Empire, waiting for his moment. The man who, according to the subtle yet damning pieces of evidence, was the one plotting against Damien. And worse, he wanted her child. Ava pressed a hand against her stomach, her mind spinning. This wasn't just some corporate power play. This was personal. This was blood. And if Damien didn't know yet, she had to tell him. Confronting Damien. Damien's office was dark, the city lights casting a blue glow through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was seated behind his massive desk, his fingers tapping against a glass of whiskey, his expression unreadable. Ava, he murmured as she stepped inside. It's late. She ignored the concern in his voice. She tossed a thick folder onto his desk. Read it, she said, her voice sharper than she intended. Damien frowned but picked it up. The room was silent except for the sound of pages turning. Ava watched as his expression changed. Tension. Realization. Rage. When he finally looked up, his eyes were cold. Ruthless. Deadly. Where did you get this? Ava swallowed. I started digging. I needed to know who was coming after us. Damien exhaled slowly, placing the folder down with deliberate calm. Then, in a voice so quiet it sent chills down her spine, he said, My own brother. The truth about Elias Lancaster. Ava had only met Elias once, in passing. He had been charming, polite, effortlessly charismatic. But now, looking at the truth laid bare in front of her, she realized just how dangerous he truly was. Elias has always wanted the Lancaster Empire, Damien said, his voice laced with bitterness. Our father made me heir, and Elias never forgave him for it. Ava's stomach twisted. That's why he's after you, she asked. Because he wants to take the company. Damien shook his head. It's more than that. He leaned forward, his gray eyes dark with fury. He doesn't just want the company, Ava. His voice dropped lower. He wants to destroy me completely. Ava felt a chill run down her spine. And what better way, Damien continued, than by taking away the one thing I died to protect? His gaze flickered down to her stomach. Her breath hitched. Her child. The game of power turns deadly. Ava's fingers tightened around the armrests of the chair. This isn't just business, she whispered. This is revenge. Damien nodded slowly. Elias doesn't want a merger. He doesn't want negotiations. He wants war. Ava's heart pounded. And you think he'll come after me? Damien's expression was grim. He already has. Ava's pulse spiked. What do you mean? Damien leaned back, running a hand through his dark hair. The car that nearly hit you last week. She froze. You think that was? Damien nodded. And the break-in at your apartment before you moved in with me? That wasn't random. Ava's hands went to her stomach, as if she could shield their child from the weight of this revelation. He wants me gone. Damien's jaw tightened. And he wants our child. Ava refuses to be a pawn. Ava took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had spent her entire life fighting for herself. She wasn't about to let some power-hungry billionaire take everything away. What do we do? She asked, her voice firm. Damien studied her for a long moment. Then, to her shock, he smirked. It wasn't a kind smile. It was a wolf's grin. We fight back. Setting a trap. Damien didn't believe in playing defense. He believed in striking first. Within hours, the Lancaster legal team had been mobilized. Assets were frozen. Business dealings were intercepted. Elias wouldn't even see it coming. We'll make him desperate, Damien murmured as he sat in the control room of his private security headquarters. And when he's desperate, he'll make a mistake. Ava watched him carefully. There was something almost terrifying about watching Damien work. Cold. Calculated. Ruthless. And yet, there was something else too. A vulnerability. He wasn't just fighting for his empire. He was fighting for her. For their family. For a future neither of them had ever dared to imagine. The final betrayal. The message arrived at midnight. Ava had been restless, unable to sleep, when her phone vibrated on the nightstand. She picked it. Chapter 8. Ava's world turned to darkness in an instant. One moment she was reaching for her phone, Damien's number already dialed. The next, a hand clamped over her mouth. The last thing she saw before everything faded was the cold glint of a syringe. Then nothing. Ava wakes in captivity. Ava's head pounded as she slowly drifted back to consciousness. Her limbs felt heavy, sluggish. The air around her was damp, thick with the scent of concrete and rust. When she tried to move, she realized the truth. She was tied to a chair. Her hands were bound behind her back with thick, unyielding rope. Her ankles were strapped to the legs of the chair, tight enough that any movement sent a sharp jolt of pain up her legs. Panic surged through her, but she forced herself to breathe. Think, Ava. Think. She wasn't alone. Somewhere nearby she could hear footsteps. Steady, measured, purposeful. Then a voice, smooth as silk but laced with venom. "Ah, you're finally awake." Ava's blood turned to ice. Elias Lancaster. Face to face with the enemy. Elias stepped into view. His expression unreadable. He was nothing like Damien. Where Damien carried himself like a storm barely held in check, Elias was all calculated charm. But Ava could see the danger beneath the surface. "Comfortable?" he asked casually, as if they were discussing the weather instead of her being tied to a chair in some unknown location. Ava lifted her chin. "Where am I?" Elias smirked. "Let's just say. Somewhere Damien won't find you in time." Ava's pulse spiked. In time for what? She fought to keep her voice steady. "If you think this is going to scare me, you're wrong. Damien will come for me." Elias chuckled. "Oh, I know he will." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "But the real question is, do you want him to?" Ava's brows furrowed. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Elias studied her for a long moment before he sighed. "You think you know who you're dealing with, don't you?" Ava didn't answer. "Let me tell you something about my dear brother," Elias continued, pacing slowly. "Damien isn't just ruthless in business. He's ruthless in everything." Ava gritted her teeth. "I already know who he is." Elias gave her a knowing look. "Do you?" He leaned in slightly. "Did he tell you what happened to his first fiancée?" Ava's stomach twisted. "She was murdered." Elias nodded. "Yes. But did he tell you why?" Ava frowned. "What are you talking about?" Elias smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Damien let her die," he said simply. "Because she was a weakness." Ava's breath caught. "Well, that wasn't possible." Elias saw the doubt flicker in her eyes and pressed on. "He could have saved her. He had the power, the resources, but he made a choice. He let her go because in his world love makes you weak. And weakness is something Damien Lancaster cannot afford." Ava shook her head. "No," she whispered. "You're lying." Elias let out a slow, mocking chuckle. "Am I?" He stepped back, watching her with something almost like pity. "You think you're different, don't you?" His gaze dropped to her stomach. "You think because you're carrying his child, he won't make the same choice again?" Ava's hands tightened into fists behind her back. "I know he won't." Elias sighed, as if genuinely disappointed. "Believe what you want," he said. "But when the time comes, you'll see the truth. Damien Lancaster will always choose power over people. Even you." Ava glared at him, refusing to believe it. But deep inside, doubt began to creep in. What if Elias was right? What if Damien really was just using her? "The clock is ticking." Elias circled her like a predator playing with his prey. "Here's what's going to happen, Ava," he said smoothly. "You're going to stay here, safe, untouched, until I finish what I started." Ava's throat went dry. "And what exactly have you started?" Elias smiled. "By now, Damien is already looking for you. He'll be desperate. And desperation makes men reckless." He glanced at his watch. "I give it 24 hours before he makes a move he can't take back." Ava's stomach twisted. "You're setting him up." Elias shrugged. "I'm simply pushing him toward his natural instincts. And when he crosses the line..." His eyes darkened. "He'll lose everything." Ava's heart pounded. Elias wasn't just after the company. He wanted to destroy Damien completely. And she was the bait. Escape plan. Ava knew she couldn't just sit here and wait. Damien was coming for her. But at what cost? She had to get out. She had to warn him before it was too late. She forced herself to stay calm, scanning the room. No windows. One door. A single guard standing by it. She needed a distraction. And then she remembered. The small, hidden blade she had sewn into the lining of her dress for emergencies. This qualified as an emergency. She shifted slightly, subtly working her fingers toward the hidden seam. Elias was still talking, gloating. He didn't notice. But her fingers closed around the tiny blade. She just had to wait for the right moment. And then, distant boom. The entire building shook. Elias's smile vanished. The guard by the door stiffened. Eva's pulse raced. And then she heard it. The unmistakable roar of an explosion. Her heart leapt. Damien. He was already here. The rescue. The door burst open. Gunfire. Shouting. Kiss. Eva didn't hesitate. With a quick, precise movement, she sliced through her restraints. The moment her wrists were free, she grabbed the nearest object, a heavy metal lamp, and swung it at the guard who lunged toward her. The impact sent him crashing to the ground. Eva scrambled to her feet, running toward the doorway, only to slam into a solid, familiar chest. Damien. His eyes were wild, furious, terrified. Eva! He breathed, his hands gripping her arms as if to make sure she was real. She barely had time to process the relief in his gaze before he pulled her into his arms. Let's go, he murmured. Before I kill my brother. The war isn't over. They escaped into the night, but Eva knew. This wasn't over. Elias wasn't done. And neither was Damien. Storm was coming. And she was caught in the middle of it. Chapter 9. The world was on fire. Eva heard the explosions first. Then gunfire. The air shook with the sound of destruction, the walls vibrating with every impact. The scent of burning wood and concrete filled her nostrils, thick and suffocating. Elias's hideout, once a carefully concealed fortress, was being obliterated. Eva's hands trembled as she clutched the fabric of her dress. She knew who was behind this. Damien. He had found her. And he wasn't here to negotiate. The fear in Elias's eyes. Elias paced, his usual calm exterior cracking. He turned to his men. Hold your positions. If he wants a war, we'll give him one. But there was something else in his voice, fear. Eva had never seen Elias afraid before. He had been so confident that he could manipulate Damien, set a trap, and take everything from him. But now, it was Damien who was taking everything from Elias. And Elias knew it. Eva swallowed hard. She had always known Damien was dangerous. She had seen glimpses of it before. His ruthlessness in business. His ability to crush anyone who stood in his way. But this was something else entirely. This was war. The attack begins. Another explosion. The lights flickered. The guards by the door exchanged nervous glances. Then silence. For one long, unbearable moment there was nothing. Just an eerie, suffocating stillness. Ring. The door burst open. A figure stepped through the smoke, moving with deadly precision. Black suit. Cold eyes. A gun in his hand. Damien. He didn't hesitate. The first guard barely had time to lift his weapon before Damien shot him point-blank. The second lunged at him. Damien dodged, twisting his arm, and with a sickening crack, the man dropped to the floor. Eva froze. She had never seen anyone move like that. Effortless. Calculated. Lethal. This wasn't just a rescue. This was eradication. The confrontation. Elias took a step forward, forcing himself to keep his composure. "Brother," he said, his voice smooth but strained. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Damien's gun was already raised. "I should have killed you a long time ago," Damien said coolly. "But I thought you weren't a threat." His gaze flicked to Eva, just for a second, then back to Elias. "But now you've made it personal." Elias laughed. "Oh, Damien. Always so dramatic." He took a slow step forward. "You think you can just storm in here, kill a few men, and walk away like nothing happened?" Elias spread his arms. "Look around you, brother. You started a war. And wars have consequences." Damien tilted his head, unfazed. "I don't lose wars." Before Elias could respond, Damien fired. The bullet ripped through Elias's shoulder, sending him staggering backward. His men scrambled, some reaching for their weapons, only to be gunned down in seconds by Damien's team. It wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. Eva flinched. Damien didn't. The final blow. Elias fell to his knees, his breath ragged. Blood soaked his expensive suit. Damien stepped closer, looming over him. "You underestimated me," Damien said quietly. Elias coughed, giving him a bloody smirk. "And you underestimated her." His gaze flicked to Eva. Damien's eyes darkened. Elias chuckled despite the pain. "Tell me, brother," he rasped. "Do you really love her? Or is she just another tool?" Eva's stomach twisted. She looked at Damien, waiting, praying for an answer. But Damien didn't speak. He just lifted his gun and pulled the trigger. The aftermath. The shot echoed through the room. Elias's body hit the floor. It was over. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Damien turned to Eva. His face was expressionless. "Let's go," he said simply. Eva stared at him. There was no remorse, no hesitation, no relief, just cold, calculated efficiency. He had just executed his own brother. And he looked at her like nothing had changed. Eva's heart pounded. Who was this man? She had always known Damien Lancaster was dangerous. But for the first time she wondered. Was she just another pawn in his game? Chapter 10. Eva stood frozen. The city lights burned around them, illuminating the chaos Damien had left in his wake. The world knew his name, whispered about his power, feared his ruthlessness. And yet, here he was, kneeling before her. His piercing eyes locked onto hers as though she were the only thing that had ever mattered. The weight of his confession still echoed in her ears. "I don't do love. But for you, I would burn the world down." Her heart pounded violently in her chest. Everything about this moment was wrong. She should have run the moment she saw what he was capable of. The way he had obliterated Elias. The way he had orchestrated destruction without a single flicker of hesitation. But she hadn't run. She was still here. And the man kneeling in front of her wasn't just offering a proposal. He was offering a prison. The power of an obsession. Damien had never been the kind of man who begged. He took. He dominated. He controlled. Yet, as he kneeled before her, the mighty Damien Lancaster, the billionaire king who could bend entire industries to his will, looked almost human. Almost. The black velvet box in his hand remained open, the glinting diamond inside worth more than most people would ever see in their lifetimes. But Eva didn't look at the ring. She looked at him. "You planned this," she whispered, barely able to form the words. "From the start." Damien's jaw tightened. "Yes. You manipulated me into this world, knowing I wouldn't be able to leave." "Yes." Her breath hitched. "You never gave me a choice." For the first time, Damien hesitated. Then, slowly, his expression darkened. His gaze simmering with something raw, something dangerous. "You were never meant to be a choice, Eva." Her stomach twisted. "You were meant to be mine." A battle of wills. Eva took a step back. "I can't," she whispered, shaking her head. "I can't be with a man who does things like this. Who kills without blinking. Who sees love as something to own rather than something to share." Damien stood, his movements slow, deliberate. "You think love is weak," he murmured. "You think it's some fragile thing that can break. But love isn't fragile, Eva. Not mine." She swallowed hard. "It's an obsession." He tilted his head slightly. "And does that scare you?" "Yes." A flicker of something dark passed through his gaze. "Good." She stiffened. "This isn't normal," she forced out. "Love isn't supposed to be a battlefield where the winner gets to keep the loser as their prize." His lips curved slightly, though there was no humor in it. "Then walk away." Eva froze. The words should have brought her relief. But the way he said them, low, unreadable, heavy with unspoken meaning, sent a shiver down her spine. She knew better than to believe him. Because walking away from Damien Lancaster was not something anyone had ever done. Not without consequences. The eyes of the world. A hush had fallen over the surrounding crowd. Though the proposal had been meant for her, the entire world was watching. Camera flashes burst around them. Journalists murmured, waiting, anticipating. The billionaire who had never loved had just declared himself to the world. And now, Ava held his fate in her hands. Or at least that was what they thought. Damien was not the kind of man to ever surrender his fate to anyone. Not even her. The moment stretched between them, heavy, unbearable. She did something neither of them expected. She reached forward and closed the box. A sharp inhale rippled through the crowd. Damien's eyes, dark, fathomless, narrowed. "I don't belong to you," she whispered. His hands clenched at his sides. "You already do," he murmured. "You just don't realize it yet." Ava held his gaze, refusing to break. "Goodbye, Damien." He turned. And this time she walked away. A future unwritten. The city roared behind her, but Ava kept moving. One step, then another. Each one felt like a war. She had loved him. Or maybe she had loved the idea of him. Of what he could have been. But Damien Lancaster was not a man who became anything for anyone. And Ava refused to be his pawn. She disappeared into the night free. But deep in her heart she knew. This wasn't the end. Not with a man like Damien. Because obsessions, they never truly end. If you enjoyed this billionaire romance audiobook, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an exciting new story. Your support means the world. See you in the next one.